Exciting session. So as you've seen, the sessions from morning, from everything to do with Society 5.0 to application of AI in smart construction, healthcare, retail, and smart governance. Now we want to tackle, a lot of this has been about technology, and I'm sure you've been fascinated with the applications of technology. Now we will host a panel which will be moderated by Kok Chinte, the chairman of the Smart Cities Network, which is about what can be done to develop human capital in AI to support smart city development. Technology is important, but smart cities are about people, so it's about the human capital. So I invite Casey, and make sure that everybody's muted. So we will have Casey moderate this session. Over to you, Casey. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. And thank you so much, everyone, for staying on in this session. We will have the gallery view so that you can look at people who will speak. And the question, although indicated that what can be done to develop human capital in AI, I would like to also include AI and robotics, because Behin's presentation was related to robotics to support smart cities development. We would also welcome questions for the other speakers, whether it's with Mayor Bernard or Pak Yudis, and also to the organizer, and as well as to Ani from McKinsey, and to Dr. Suzuki from Japan, where we can convey. So let us now open the floor. If anyone is interested, I suppose they can raise their hand to ask question, or is that how it's going to run, Arvin? Do they raise their hand?
Either they raise their hand or they use the chat.
Okay, raise your hand. There are over 100 people in this session. You may want to put a plus sign in the chat so that we know that you would like to speak. Anyone, I welcome anybody with any questions. We will welcome you to ask any question related to the session. Go ahead.
Please do so. And in the interim, Casey, I think what we were also planning was for this to be a panel discussion around the topic of developing human capital. So we could potentially kick off some of those discussions.
Okay, so let me first, of course, ask Mayor Bernard in terms of the plans that he and I sort of planned early last year, when after the second workshop that I did with him, we are both co-chair for the task force related to development of smart cities. I will start with Mayor Bernard. What would you think could be done for smart cities in the Philippines? And maybe you could share your thoughts, and I will share our agreed goal of the cities in the Philippines. So go ahead, maybe specific to your city, and how are you working to ramp up the human capital development in your city and perhaps in Isabela province? Mayor, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Casey, and pleasant afternoon again to everyone in this meeting, in this webinar. I think that this is very important to really develop human capital on AI and robotics on our part. We have a strong collaboration with Isabela State University, our academy here, and we have full support with regards to their programs and projects. In fact, we have just launched. Well, we were supposed to do a grand opening or launching of our Birdsea. It's what we call the Business Intelligence Resource Development Center that is funded by the local government, which is housed in the Isabela State University, to really hone and expose the students to be able to expose their knowledge and their knowings and on smart cities as well as innovations. So I think that's one of the things that is important in this topic is for us to be able to collaborate. Whether you're in government, you're in the private sector, or you're in the academe, we have to really come together to really open opportunities for development of the human capital, especially now that the pandemic has hit us. A lot of people are really coming up with so many ideas, so many innovations that we need to have a platform for them to have that. So I think that's my take on this, Casey.
Thank you so much. We do have one question. What I will do is that I will have a mixture of questions to our panelist speakers and as well as questions from the floor. In addition to what Mayor Bernard was said, to give everyone a little bit of a background to the work that he just presented. It was actually a collaboration with one of the members of the Smart Cities Network called Graphico. They provide the digital twin where some of the screenshots you saw. It was actually during the COVID-19 in April that their team in Kawayan City in charge of the disaster risk reduction and management were sharing with us through the lead for the smart cities, attorney Reina. She told us they have a drone, and thereafter we decided that we would train the city officials in the use of the drone to take thousands of photographs. And from the thousands of photographs, we had 2 training sessions from which the team based out of Kuala Lumpur taught the city officials how to capture the photographs. The photographs were then processed and we presented a digital twin, and everything done during the midst of COVID-19. So I think that was the kind of capacity building kind of a process that we have established with Mayor Bernard, and hopefully my discussion with him, notwithstanding the COVID-19, was to plan for 100 cities in the next 3 years in the Philippines, so that we will replicate the process of how we train the cities. And we have a question from Jean Cadebois, and I will articulate the question, and I will have Oliver, who runs the APARA as an advisor, will answer that. So let me verbalize the question. Not much was said about privacy for individuals evolving in cities that are getting increasingly smarter and tracking our daily lives more and more. Is there a consensus amongst the panelists on this topic? So it's a very good question. Oliver, go ahead, and maybe we'd like to get your views on this.
Sure, thanks,
Go ahead, Oliver.
Thanks, Cochin. Appreciate that. Thanks, Ms. Jin, for that question. Let me share a bit around what we can all look at, and I guess you did direct the question at the panelists, so they can probably jump in as well to share their views. The whole discussion around privacy and ethics is a very current topic, and around the world, many countries are definitely looking into what does that mean. More importantly, as we explore the understanding and use of intelligent systems with AI in place, you find that machines will be able to do more than what is expected. There are 2 sides to the whole discussion. One is really in terms of the data collection, right? Most of the time we look at how data has been collected from past experience, past records, and then they are analyzed, and those are eventually used for the machine to learn and adopted accordingly, whether they are in algorithms or in decision-making process. Of course, this is past experience bias, meaning that if we have been doing things wrongly, we continue to do it wrongly unless there is an intervention of first principle that's able to rectify or make good those data bias. The second part is really around how do we respect individuals in giving away their information. So just to do a typical discussion, right? Today, private hires are becoming a lot more prevalent. We do Grab in Singapore and Uber in many other countries, TT in China. So if there is a pattern whereby you travel from home, one location home to office at 8 a.m. in the morning, and then you have a preferred driver who will come and pick you because over time the pattern matches. That data is being collected by the platform. So after 6 months, we realized that maybe you have to stop by a in-between location before going to office. So that data is again collected by the platform. So how is this data then used and analyzed? And does it intrude into an individual's privacy because the data is being collected and applied or used in another scenario, right? Now those become very tricky and no government today has an answer to that. Slowly and surely, there is probably a need to look at AI principles and AI biases as a rule of thumb, as well as the adoption and use of data privacy and putting that under one broad category of AI ethics and framework. APARA as an association has initiated a committee on ethical and responsible AI. Our intention is actually to look into this particular premise itself. So if you follow the 8 themes of our webinar, on the 17th of September, that webinar will be dedicated and focused on the theme of ethical and responsible AI. And in that webinar itself, we will invite experts from England, from Asia, to talk a bit around the different governance model and what are the considerations for this issue of privacy, where more and more intelligence are built into cities, and how and what is the rightful ethical use of those intelligence in a way where it benefits the government, it benefits the individuals, and there is no misuse of that data. So we welcome you to join us on the 17th of September for the discussion. APARA as an organization is also trying to develop a framework to consider some of these issues, and we have been studying frameworks, white papers that have been developed by other countries such as the United States, the UK, Germany, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and Korea. And we hope to integrate some of these ideas together and share some of these thoughts with the government, and hopefully different governments can adopt and use some of these concepts. So it's a good discussion. It is important that we know what our data is being used for, and it is also important that as we build smart cities, we also must have smart citizens that can leverage on that technology and ensure that eventually it augments our potential. Right, so over to you again, Kok-Hin.
Okay, thanks, Oliver. I will go through the question. I don't have time for everyone to sort of give their comments. So let's address the question from the participants. The Nabil Jamal Sunka asked one question, short question. During the COVID-19 pandemic, will the AI tech be the one of the fundamental technologies to do new normal process? Maybe I will actually address that to Yudis, to whom has actually used many of the AI technology in Jakarta. Maybe you can answer that very briefly, Yudis. But Yudis, please. Please submit yourself first. You may need to unmute yourself, by Yudis.
Yudis, are you okay?
You need to unmute yourself. So you go to the Zoom meeting and then unmute yourself.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for the question, Kevin. Called Casey. So there's a very good question. So as a fundamental emerging technology, artificial intelligence will be the fundamental technology to do a new normal process basically in Jakarta. Let's say, for example, we are working with the partner, we're working with the startup to establish a contract tracing app. Of course, the contract tracing app is absolutely is widely so in this context, artificial intelligence is widely used. As I mentioned on my slide, we established the testing, what we call the corona likelihood matrix. So we're using machine learning to develop the model. But again, model is there's no 100% uh, accurate for the model. Model need to be developed time to time. So, but again, I think I would like to address another question. So when we're talking about the smart city, the end of the concept of smart city, it's about security and privacy. So there's a lot of issue on smart city when we go into a deep in smart city. So privacy is a very main concern. It will be the main concern in the future. So uh, so frankly speaking, in other words, so yeah, so we make use the artificial intelligence in the process of the new normal in the COVID-19 pandemic in Jakarta.
Thank you. Now there's a question by Jolene Ang, and it's a question in the mind of many people, I'm sure. I will ask every speakers, both from the government side and from the two speakers from the Smart Cities Network to answer, and I will verbalize the question. Thank you all the speakers for your sharing. I have a question directed at Mayor Bernard and Yudis. From your sharing, we understand that to carry out the Smart Cities project, you partner with private companies such as Graphico and Noteflux, as well as academic institutions. Would love to know how these projects are funded and if there are further plans or partnership for this. Maybe I will go back to Mayor Bernard first, and I ask you this to share about the No Floods partnership. Mayor Bernard, you can be free to share openly about how you partner with the Graphico. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much for that question, Casey. Yeah, we really have strong partnerships with the academe and the private sector for a lot of reasons. Number one is for it to be sustainable and for it to be future proof. So when I'm done, for example, when I'm not sitting as mayor anymore, it will be sustainable. That's one. Next will be it's really um, up to us to look for ways, look for be resourceful enough to really partner with this the private sector. In the case of Graphico, it was lucky break for us, of course, thanks to the help of Casey. This is a sort of competition that we entered into with one of the organizations, WeGo. It's a global organization of smart and sustainable cities, wherein they had to choose one beneficiary, and we were lucky that we were chosen. And through this endeavor, WeGo will give funding for that, but also the city government will have a counterpart. So this is how we do things here. We try to look for partners, innovations. We have a lot of private-public partnerships in place in the last couple of years, and basically how we do it is either shared expense, but most often than not, the city government does not even shell out a single centavo. It's really also a part of the private sector to market their new innovations. In the last 5 years since I started, or the last 7 years since I started, to all the people that I talk to, whether it be multinationals, MSMEs, and it's just small entrepreneurs, individual entrepreneurs, I just tell them, make Hawaiian City as a city land. We are a very manageable city, a size of a city, wherein they can experiment in all of the innovations that they have. So I think that's one thing that has led to another, and that's why we have a lot of these innovations boiling in our city. So I hope that answered the question. But finally, before I let it go, when you talk about smart cities, it's not exclusive to cosmopolitan, rich, first world cities. It can be as complex as having sensors in every street of the city, but it can also be as simple as informing the farmers if it's going to rain or not. So it's the same impact the people, and if Kauai City, a poor city, can do it, there's no reason for other local governments not to do it.
Thank you, Mayor Bernard. And but you this, how about with no floods? Maybe you can share that. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Pak Casey.
Sorry, I missed that question. Can you say again?
No, the question about how is the project funded, the no floods project that you have for the vehicle identification and tracking of the road tax.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for the question. So basically, we are collaborating with NotLuck as the catalyst project. So we do have the Sandbox project. Sandbox project basically is a platform for problem owner and the problem solver. So in this context, problem owner is a government of Jakarta, and the problem solver is a NotLuck. But we at the first time, NotLuck only had the technology to face recognition, but we teaching the problem to NotLuck to recognize the plate license in order to identify whether or not the vehicle is already paying the taxes. But this is because this is a piloting project with NotLuck, because when they want to implement the technology, they need a playground. Jakarta is a capital city. We provide a playground for NotLuck. We facilitate them to implement the innovation in Jakarta. So if this project is implemented well, they can enlarge the project to be implemented to other cities. So in other words, Jakarta is a capital, is a catalyst.
Nang may multitask na hera kaya to kang dun jala ela. Na po na po isaila.
I'm sorry, you need to mute
whoever that's talking.
Hello. Yes. Okay. So
Go ahead.
okay.
Sorry, Oliver, can you actually help to mute whoever that's not muted?
No, because
Thank you.
Payudis didn't come in, log in properly. So Payudis, please continue, and for the rest of us, please mute your phones.
So you're still muted, but you this. Can you please unmute yourself, please?
Okay, thank you. So
Go ahead.
for the NotFlug, basically, so when we talking about the funding, so there's a many scheme. One is through the regional budget, and the second is through the partnership between Jakarta Smart City and the startup. Because as I mentioned before, the Jakarta Smart City is a semi-private company. I would say semi-private company. So and also it's a regional public agency. So and the third scheme is a public-private partnership. Now because for this project, so basically at the moment, so we done this piloting last year, and we're going to implement it. So basically this year, but due to the COVID, the full implementation is postponed due to the COVID. But we in terms of the scheme that we collaborate with NotPlug, it's a scheme like a license and the services. So we as a we are consider NotPlug as the system integrator, but Jakarta Smart City is providing service to the citizen, something like that. But this project will be, I think it's very interesting question, because funding is always matters. Therefore, we develop the project to identify the appropriate funding that can be used to implement it, any smart city project that implements Jakarta. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Yudis. I will actually switch the question around, right? Rather than expecting or having heard the cities, I would like to now ask our two other speakers from the solution side. How are your projects to the cities? And I start with Eric because he mentioned about the 30 plus projects that he has done with G Element. Maybe Eric, you want to share some of the business model that you have with the cities, where whether they fund you or you have to cost out your own costs. You share very briefly, and then I will ask Bihin to share his model. Go ahead, Eric. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Coffee. I think this is a very good question. I think everybody is concerned about funding, and actually that is also I heard what Mayor Bernard and also from Jakarta sharing how they are funding in a very I would say in a way that I would say that currently we haven't had any involvement with Jakarta as well as Philippines. But I can share from my experience with Chiang Mai, with Bandung, and also with some of the city projects. That's why during our in my presentation I share about having to start small, because the first fundamental thing is really budget. Okay, so and budget is also tied to justification. So as you can see, what we are trying to present here is we are trying to, of course, let everybody come out a bit from each other, and that's what we have been doing. Each of us will have to come out with your own investment. The private sector will have to come up some of their own investment, but at the same time, we also are helping the city mayors and to justify for why they should spend also on their portion, and that is really linked to two parts. One is an experimental pilots project. The second part, which they will have to come out some amount of money, and as well as the other one is from the institution that they want to get involved their students to be involved in the real project implementation. That's where the fund will come from. That's another source. Of course, the third source will come from consultancy projects, which we are able to deliver as part of consultancy project, which is already part of the tender for some smart cities pilot, and that's also one way of doing it. So as of today, I think smart cities projects have no choice but have to be implemented in phases. And I really encourage that we all have to come up with the funding, which is to solve these funding things. But whereas for smart building, which is my topic today, I think we have no problem to justify for a tender to be awarded, because it's more clearer for smart building, and it's actually quite manageable in a smart building justification. I hope that answered the question a little bit of the different sources of funding that we have been involved.
Thanks, Eric. And Bihin, go ahead.
Okay, all right. In Singapore, I think I shared how we have long-term contract with Ministry of Education and Defense, and all these are through tenders. But recently, I've noted that the government have taken a very interesting approach. Instead of tenders, specifying clearly the specs, and sometimes we are talking about something that is highly innovative, something that is quite futuristic. It's very difficult to express in tender, and that could be quite limiting. So in Singapore, the government has actually gone on this OIP platform, which is very good, the Open Innovation Platform, which is basically the user. It could be the government, or it could be a private enterprise. Say, I got a problem here, and it's a problem statement. And anybody out there who understands this problem, and of course it can be clarified, and who think that you have your own solution. It could be a platform, it could be software development, or whatever it is. Propose your solution, yeah. And they would even state upfront that yes, this is a prize money, and yes, you can also start off with a prototype. And once the prototype is done, which is paid, of course they specify what is the sum. Then that can of course be developed in a full-blown scalable solution, yeah, for even the entire industry. So I think that is a very innovative way of sourcing for interesting solution, but with certain funds set apart. However, instead of specifying the needs, actually they state the problems. So that is one thing I'm finding in Singapore.
Of course, I shared earlier how we have this whole range of platform that we have built. This platform, we actually invest ourselves. Yeah, this is my third generation platform. The first generation platform, there was a grant given by our government through this enterprise development grant. However, this is my third generation, and I just go ahead, invest first, and I then look for opportunity to scale. And how do I scale? I look for partners. Yeah. Part of the other solution, of course, is that we get grants, for example, for content development. So our trails that was launched by that was done for the tourism space was done with a small grant for Singapore Tourism Board. But because it's a grant from a Singapore Tourism Board, it's a small grant. The IP and the content and the platform belongs to me. So that gives me a lot of latitude. So that's where new models can come in. So what is my model, for example, with regards to experiential travel app? I work with travel agencies. I work with hotels. I work with a map company. For example, one of the map company I work with is PTG Map. It's actually a UK company, 45 years in the making, in Singapore. And they have been printing millions of maps in Singapore. Everybody that comes to Singapore, they will pick up the map. So what is the deal there? I say, well, I have my content. You need not to invest a single cent. I've already invested 75 trails, 750 point of interest. But guess what? Can we now collaborate? Yeah. So I collaborate with him. And then he print the map. And when people pick up the map, it's a 3D AR map. They also discover the trail. If they do a purchase, we do revenue share. So that works. Yeah. The same thing that we are doing with hotels. For example, we work with Far East. They bundle our solution together with staycation. So these are the organizations that have the market. And because they have the market, they have the reach, I have the technology, I work with them and we revenue share. So that's one model. Today, I have a conversation with one of the government. Cannot quite say what is it now because it's still not closed. But I share with them what our platform can do. How our platform can allow people without programming knowledge to create content, bring on board merchants, and then reach out directly to consumer, but through distributors. They are very interested in the platform. So they ask me, well, what can we do? And can you propose some solution? I say very simple. One solution is you throw our tender. We can create a customized app for you. And of course, we can give you a code. The other way we can do is you provide some funds. Yeah, you license our platform. And once you provide the licensing for a platform, you can then invite your entrepreneur. Everybody can come on board. They can create content, own the content. Yeah. And then they bring on board the merchants and they can start to monetize. So they are happy. We are happy. The government is happy because from the government point of view, the cost of investment is small. But we have a platform that can invite a lot more entrepreneurs to come on board to create their own content and then to monetize out of it. Yep. So that is a second model. The third model, I say, well, I already have a platform with regards to travel because they want to promote domestic travel. And the third thing you can do is you can just write on our platform. That means all you need to do is park aside some money and we can create trails. In fact, you need not to pay us to create trail. Yeah, you can also pay us to train our people so that they can create trails. And with that, then since our solution is an international brand, we can drive more people to their country. So what is interesting here is that the government is prepared to put in some money, but they say, well, your solution is very good. They can even now ask investors to come on board to look at our platform and then after that, work together with them and scale in their country.
Thank you. Thank you, Bihin and Eric. When Bihin talks about the government, he's referring to the Singapore government. So I want to qualify. Yeah. So the model that but you just mentioned just now, where a problem owner actually picks up the problem and the problem solver, mostly solution providers, will then work on the project in the sandbox. I think that model is a sustainable model because there's ownership to the problem and there's someone who is interested to solve the problem. And in Singapore, they call it the open innovation platform, where there are some funding from the problem owners. It could be the private sector who has a certain problems that they want to address, or it could be the government agencies. And I'm aware that one of the such model was implemented for the built environment, where the Building and Construction Authority actually subsequently did a model whereby they will fund up to 70 or even 90% of the pilot projects, so that the private sector, instead of having to cough up the pilot funding of maybe tens of thousands or up to 70,000 usually Singapore dollars, and they have a solution that will solve or help them to be more innovative. We exceeded 4 o'clock. I will take one last question, which is the question that was asked by 943 **4 right, about energy consumption, right? And I'll take this one last question, and I'd like to invite anyone who may want to respond. Energy consumption and sustainability are also now concerns, both the public and the private sectors. Do we expect existing power supply capacity to be able to meet our needs and also be cost effective? Right. So, is there anyone who would like to respond to that? Well, I can respond on behalf of the Singapore side, because I'm quite involved with the energy sector, largely through EMA and of course to NEA and all these agencies. What we have is that Singapore, at least in Singapore, we have more or less allowed other energy suppliers to come and have consumers to choose their energy supply. So from a Singapore angle, we in Singapore consumers have benefited from this open market suppliers of energy to the homes, and now the consumers have a choice. So at least from our side, it will not be a problem at all. But I would say that in some cities, and that's why we work with the ESCAP for UN SDG number 7, where there are still millions of people and billions without proper energy being provided to their countries and cities. So that is something that they will need, and of course we will need to work on that. So with that, I will now hand over to Oliver because we have 5 minutes past 4. Oliver, you may want to sort of sum up our session here. I thank you for allowing and working with us on this. I'd like to thank, of course, our speakers from Japan, Dr. Suzuki, Anis, and as well as our collaboration partners, Mayor Bernard and Dr. Orlando and Pak Yudis, and of course our members, Alvin, who leads AI, Eric, together with Bihin, who have the opportunity to share. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us to this time.